How much money is lost when Pakistan don't play India in the T20 World Cup? And perhaps more crucially, who loses what? Let's talk about money. Now, before we get into it, one quick housekeeping note. For ease, I'm going to convert everything into US dollars, even though there are other currencies in play. Now, the key thing to understand is that when a match as big as India versus Pakistan disappears, the money doesn't vanish from one pocket. Some of it is ticketing, some of it is advertising, some of it is broadcast rights value, and some of it is sponsorship obligations. And the who loses what question mostly comes down to one central fact. The ICC sells the tournament and then it distributes profits to member boards under a formula. So the boards don't own the match revenue directly, but they do feel the hit if the tournament surplus shrinks. All right, let's build this out properly using the 2024 T20 World Cup as our template, because that's the most recent complete tournament we can use to anchor the scale of the economics. So according to the Economic Times, the 2024 Men's T20 World Cup was linked to event revenue reported at about $691 million US, and that tournament performance fed into a major ICC surplus year. Separately, post-event business analysis has put the total tournament media revenue, so that's the broadcast side, at around $1.15 billion US for 2024. And the sponsorship value for the tournament has estimated to be about roughly $61 million US according to global data. So even before we get into the specific match, we have a scale. This is a tournament where media rights are measured in hundreds of millions to over $1 billion in value, and sponsorship is measured in the tens of millions. So let's zoom in now to the match in question, India versus Pakistan, or Pakistan versus India. This fixture is commercially unique because it attracts unusually high global viewership, and most importantly, it anchors the biggest cricket media market on earth, India. So if that match doesn't happen, the question becomes, what is the realistic value at risk? And then how does that filter through to the ICC and then down to the boards like India's and Pakistan's? Let's break it down into four buckets, okay? Ticket sales and match day revenue, broadcasting and advertising sponsorship, and partner obligations, the downstream effect on the distribution to boards. That's what we're going to focus on. So let's start with ticketing because that's the simplest conceptually. For a template, we can look at 2024. According to the Times of India, the official ticket price range reported around the India-Pakistan 2024 World Cup match included figures from $300 US up to $10,000 US. And that's part of why the game is always treated like the crown jewel. Now, 2026 venues and pricing structures are clearly different, especially if the matches are in South Asia. So you can't just copy and paste the New York pricing. Obviously, prices in Colombo will be different to prices in New York. But you can still make a reasonable range for matchday gate revenue. A defensible estimate for ticketing and matchday revenue at risk for one India-Pakistan group match, meaning tickets, hospitality, on-ground income linked to this match, is roughly $5 million to $15 million US. That range is deliberately cautious. It recognizes huge demand, but it doesn't pretend the average ticket is going to be New York 2024 pricing. So that's bucket one. Ticketing and matchday revenue, $5 to $15 million at risk. Now, bucket two, broadcast and advertising. This is where the big numbers live, and where people often get confused because there's a difference between money paid to the ICC in rights contracts and money the broadcaster expects to make selling advertising and sponsorship around the match. Here's the cleanest way to frame it. If the match disappears, the broadcaster may face refunds, credits, or make good inventory obligations to advertisers, reduced ability to deliver promised audiences, and potential pressure to seek compensation depending on contract terms. Keep that in mind. So the biggest immediate risk is on the broadcaster side, but that risk can then become an ICC problem if the broadcaster pushes back contractually. For the 2024 template, business reporting in the Business Standard described the India-Pakistan clash as commanding exceptionally high ad rates, with 10-second spots reportedly around 4 to 5 million Indian rupees per 10 seconds, which is roughly $50,000 to $60,000 US per 10-second spot at typical conversion rates. Now, you can do a premium uplift model. If a normal big India game might clear, let's say, half that rate, then the extra value of an India-Pakistan game is a premium uplift per spot. And industry reporting has also talked about the volume of ad inventory per match being very large, a high triple-digit number of 10-second equivalents in a modern broadcast package. But rather than build a fragile estimate entirely from rate cards and spot counts, there is a more direct and very relevant anchor for your specific question, because the industry is already pricing this exact risk for 2026. According to Best Media Info, there's an estimate that the broadcaster referred to as Jio Hotstar faces around 200 to 250 crore rupees in advertising risk if the India-Pakistan match doesn't happen. Converted into US dollars, that's approximately 24 to 30 million US dollars. Now, the number is not the ICC's loss by itself, that is the broadcaster's ad sales exposure, but it gives us a realistic base cap scale for the single biggest chunk of commercial risk created by no match. So for our model, a reasonable base range for the total broadcast and ad value at risk from the missing match, including India plus non-India markets, is about 30 to 55 million US dollars. How do we get there? If India's ad exposure is around 24 to 30 million and you add the rest of the world's commercial value, Pakistan, UK, Middle East, other diaspora markets, plus shoulder programming and digital impacts, you can reasonably arrive at 30 to 55 million dollars tournament-wide commercial loss in the base scenario. A low scenario would assume minimal downstream impact, but basically you lose the match, but you replace it with other inventory that doesn't give huge rebates, repeat matches, for instance. That would put you closer to 10 to 20 million dollars in total. And a high scenario where there's a significant contractual pushback and bigger credits or renegotiation, the loss could go well beyond 60 million US dollars. But defensible estimates where we should avoid sensationalism, the base one is important. So our base estimate, 30 to 55 million US dollars. Okay, bucket 3 is sponsorship and partner obligations. Sponsors generally don't pay per match, they pay for the tournament, but tournaments still have to deliver value. If the biggest match disappears, sponsors can demand extra exposure elsewhere, replacement inventory, or in some cases, renegotiated terms depending on what was sold. Inventory in this case refers to matches, of course. For 2024, sponsorship value for the tournament has been estimated at around $61 million, again, according to global data. So the question becomes, what proportion of that tournament sponsorship value is effectively tied to this marquee India versus Pakistan match? It's not 50%, but it also isn't zero. A reasonable conservative estimate of sponsor make-good pressure attributable to losing one marquee fixture like India versus Pakistan is in the range of 1 to 5 million US dollars. That's not necessarily sort of cash out the door. It could be value compensated by inventory, but it's still commercial value that has to be replaced. Now, bucket 4, who loses what? ICC, India's board, Pakistan's board. This is where the revenue distribution model matters. According to ESPN Cricinfo, under the 2024 and 2027 ICC revenue distribution model, India's board takes roughly 38.5% of the ICC's distributable earnings. Pakistan's board typically cites at around 5.75%. So if an ICC tournament surplus shrinks, India's board loses the biggest member share amount in pure dollars because it has the largest percentage, and Pakistan's board loses less in raw dollars, but that doesn't mean the impact is smaller relative to their finances. Now let's apply the distribution logic to the 3 scenarios. First, the total ICC system revenue shortfall. Low scenario, 10 to 20 million dollars. Base scenario, 30 to 55 million dollars. High scenario, 60 to 100 million dollars or more if there's severe contractual conflict. Now multiply those by the distribution shares. In the low scenario, 10 to 20 million, India's share at 38.5% is about 3.9 to 7.7 million US dollars. Pakistan's share at 5.75% is about 0.6 to 1.2 million dollars, and the remainder falls on the ICC and the rest of the membership collectively. In the base scenario, 30 to 55 million, India's share is about 11.6 to 21.2 million dollars. Pakistan's share is about 1.7 to 3.2 million dollars, and the rest is borne by the ICC and all the other members combined. In the high scenario, 60 to 100 million dollars, India's share is 23.1 to 38.5 million dollars. Pakistan's share is 3.5 to 5.8 million US dollars, and again, the rest hits the ICC and the other boards around the world. Now, to be absolutely clear, because accuracy matters here, this is not saying that the BCCI is writing a check for $20 million to anyone. It's saying if the tournament's distributable earnings fall by that amount and the distribution model stays unchanged, that's the scale of the downstream loss in the distribution value. Where does the ICC sit in this? The ICC is the body that has to absorb the lost ticketing and match day event revenue, sponsorship, make goods, and crucially, any contractual disputes or credits tied to the broadcast delivery. So the ICC takes the first and most direct operational hit, and then the boards feel it through distributions. So who loses what? In base terms, The ICC and the tournament system, they lose roughly 30 to 55 million of commercial value. India's board through distribution impact, roughly 12 to 21 million dollars. Pakistan's board through distribution impact, roughly 2 to 3 million US dollars. And ticketing is an additional direct toll on the event side, around 5 to 15 million dollars, which sits far more with the ICC event economics than either board. Now, one final layer. All of this is just economic modeling. Obviously, it's really high level. Apologies, but stay with me. We're not attempting to price penalties, political consequences, future scheduling leverage, or the longer term erosion of confidence in the tournament product. Those are real, but they aren't quantifiable responsibly without official documents and statements. We're still waiting for more information. If India-Pakistan doesn't happen, the safest evidence-aligned estimate is that the tournament ecosystem risks tens of millions of dollars in lost value, with a base case of roughly 30 to 55 million US dollars. The ICC takes the direct commercial shock first. India's board likely loses the most in raw distribution dollars because it receives the biggest share of the ICC distributable earnings. Pakistan's board loses less in absolute dollars, but may face the sharper relative pressure because its overall financial base is smaller and because the political and operational consequences, they might be coming. And that's the real answer to the question. How much money is lost? Potentially tens of millions. And who loses what? In the best case, the ICC absorbs the immediate commercial hole, the BCCI takes the largest downstream distribution hit, and the PCB takes a smaller dollar loss, but with potentially bigger consequences later. I know that was a lot. Well done for making it to the end. What do you make of all of this? Does it all make sense? Did I make any mistakes with the math? I don't think I did, but let me know if you think I did. Do you think Pakistan did the right thing? Would you have liked to have seen that match? Would you have liked to have seen them go the other way? I don't know. Let me know in the comments below. Remember to like, share, and subscribe my channel, and I'll see you in the next one.